good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, to this webinar on the future of our WASH data ecosystem. So welcome to WASHWeb's first ever online event with speakers from a wide range of different organizations, all working towards a common goal. Hopefully you will see a lot more of us soon. So who are we? As WASHWeb, we are a dynamic bottom-up initiative, and we are forming a community that sits at the intersection of data and WASH. And we're facilitating discussions on different topics, including social justice, using data better, systems thinking, the 4 Ws, so who's doing what, where are they doing it, and when are they doing it? And of course, we are also open to new ideas as we're starting to shape this community. So our vision is that WASH data is discoverable, representative, and useful. So what do these 3 things mean? Discoverable means that data is easily found when interest is shown on a specific topic. Representative means that information represents reality from a variety of different perspectives. And useful means that information is traceable, up to date, and also reusable. So today in this webinar, we're having 6 different presentations of about 10 minutes each. So first, we will have OpenWASH Data present. OpenWASH Data is our first WASHWeb partner working towards open science workflows. Next, we have MWater, a leading management information system provider in WASH that includes advanced features like pipe system mapping. Our third presentation is a combination of IRC and WASHNote. IRC is a thought leader in system strengthening, and Nick of WASHNote is one of the co-leads of WASHWeb. Next, we have a presentation from USAID WSSH Data Analytics program, which is a new initiative spearheaded by USAID to strengthen the WASH data ecosystem, together with ACFO as one of its consortium members. Our 5th presentation is from Acquia, a research organization that uses and engages with WASH data on a regular basis, and they'll be presenting on Project W. And finally, WASH AI, the founder of WASH AI, will be presenting on opportunities for data discovery with large language models. So throughout the webinar, we ask that you type your questions into the chat during the call. So during each presentation, if something pops up, ask the question in the chat and we will take note of these. And at the end of all 6 presentations, we will do a larger Q&A where we select and ask a few questions to our presenters. The call will also be recorded and shared after the event, and we'll also share all slides on the WASHWeb website, which is washweb.org. Now that I'm here, I would also like to say that if you want to join the WASHWeb community, you feel free to join on Matrix, which is an online platform where we can continue discussions with the people that you meet here today and the people that have presented here today. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn for more updates at WASHWeb. Without further ado, let's get started. So our first presenter is Lars from OpenWASH Data. Lars, if you could share your screen, then we can get started.
Yeah, thank you, Merel, for this great introduction. I'm representing OpenWASH Data, a community effort to bring open data practices to the WASH sector. I work for Global Health Engineering here at ETH Zurich in Switzerland. And yeah, we've started this initiative about a year ago. We believe that there is a huge opportunity that we have in our sector, which is largely missed because very little data currently is shared publicly following best practices for reuse, just like Merel already outlined as one of their visions. And one of the missed opportunities are journal articles written by scientists, researchers in our sector. And for this, we recently looked at the data availability statements of 924 articles published in the Journal of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene for Development, which probably everyone knows here in this call through IWA Publishing. between 2011 and 2023. And you can see here the data availability statements on the vertical axis and the number of publications on the horizontal axis. And the colors here differentiate between papers published before 2020 and later than 2020, or in 2020 itself, when a policy was introduced that requires authors to select one of these three data availability statements when they publish their paper with the Journal for Open WASH Data. After that policy was introduced, we see that still 15% of papers are without the statement. Got to dig a little deeper into that, why that is the case, while about 60% of the papers state that data was available in the paper, which could also be the supplementary material. Another 64 available on request, which is normally by email, and another 27 have stated it to be in an external online repository. And when we looked at the supplementary material of each paper itself, an article published in 2020 and later, we found that half of the published articles still had no data alongside the article itself. But the more important and insightful takeaway here probably is that of the files that we found, not a single file type was actually shared in a format that would qualify for so-called FAIR principles for data sharing, enabling reuse, findability, accessibility, etc. And that's really something we're hoping to change with our community, where simply sharing data as a CSV file would go a very long way, maybe in addition to a data dictionary that also describes the variables and columns that sit in the data. Another data sink that we find are PDF reports. We love them in our sector, right? They're everywhere. They're typically designed by graphic designers that receive content from us. They take quite a long time to be produced because, right, we got to like first get all the content and work with the graphic designer back and forth. Unfortunately, these actually valuable reports never come with the underlying unprocessed raw data attached. In this particular report, we could get access to data for treatment performance of 8 fecal sludge treatment plants across Africa and Asia. What we get instead are tables with ranges instead of the complete number of data points, all of which could help make national estimates, regional estimates, help the WHO, UNICEF make global estimates for safely managed sanitation. But yeah, at this point, most of these reports just come without the attached unprocessed raw data. Yeah, to address all this, we started this community, and we have defined a vision ourselves, which is an active global community that applies these FAIR principles. There's a quite famous paper published in 2016 about these that outlines them in detail. They are rather technical, but that's the whole point. We are going to support people in applying them to their data without having to learn the details about them. So the workflows that we do invest into, they follow them by default, helping to get this data, give data in our greater water and sanitation sector more publicity. And I say greater because we include topics like solid waste management, air quality, humanitarian aid, international development. This is not just limited to WASH in itself. The mission here really is to empower WASH professionals to engage with these tools, learn it themselves, help them, develop workflows for open data and code, so it comes from the people itself. We are rather providing a service now at the beginning, and over time invest into people being able to do it themselves. We're doing this through our Open WASH Data publishing arm, for which we developed a workflow that uses data either donated by WASH professionals or available online, for example, in the supplementary material Word file of a paper, and we republish it following these FAIR principles for data sharing. The product of this is an R package, the R statistical software for data analysis, and it gets a website for each data set. So this is the domain of this website. We assign a digital object identifier that enables the tracking of citations of the data package. And also we list all contributors with their ORCID ID that we ask them to get if they don't have one yet, so their contributions and citations can be linked. The data here is documented in a way that each variable name or column in the data are described in detail as to which information is sitting in this column. And for those that do not use R, we also share the data as a CSV and Excel download. So you could also reuse it yourself if you didn't want to use this within the R software for data analysis. To date, we have published 12 data sets following this workflow, and we are getting more and more efficient in the workflows ourselves. So hopefully we can aim for maybe 2 data sets a month soon. It's been quite fun doing all of this. We also established the Open WASH Data Academy, through which we provide training to anyone interested in the sector. And our first training was hosted last year in October and December. It's free, it's live, so it's not like watching videos. We're doing it online through Zoom, and it's about a 10-week program. We had 200 registrations, 100 people showed up, and we're getting about 40 graduates, all people that have shared their own data, writing a report that's going to be public alongside the data openly. And the next iteration will probably be in September, October 2024. If you're interested to learn about it when it actually happens, sign up. Here's the link to the form where you can sign up for interest. Big questions are what's next? That was the first year, 12 months. We established a community, we established infrastructure that includes the website, a newsletter, a blog, and also a chat, the same infrastructure as used for WASHWeb, interestingly. We have established the data science for Open WASH data course and have a bunch of graduates and our data package workflow. All of that was part of phase 1, 2023, 2024. And our next step is phase 2, which is this and next year, where we just submitted a proposal for phase 2. You can access the proposal on this website, link down here at the bottom if you're interested in the details, where we hope to establish so-called data stewards. And these data stewards are a bit different than learning data science. They're actually people that sit within organizations and have the responsibility for the entire data management. And that includes file management, folder management, project management, etc. But we're implementing these through strategic partnerships. At this point, we have 3 where these people will be funded within these organizations, one in Malawi, one in Haiti, and then the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, Durban. That will be the Data Stewardship Network. We're hoping to grow it. If you're interested in joining it or your organizations, please reach out to us. Part of this phase 2 will also be investing further in our data package workflow, and maybe most importantly, establishing a governance structure for all of this so that we can aim for long-term sustainability in terms of funding, but also in terms of decision-making. As we grow, we really want to make sure that we have set up this properly. Phase 3, then, that's all future, but maybe one day we will have a journal for Open WASH data where we can put emphasis on the data itself, go away from the scientific publications, and get people to publish the data alongside these workflows through the Data Stewardship Network so that we get all more access and credit for our work that is so valuable at that point. If you do want to stay up to date, I invite you to follow us through our newsletter. Here's a QR code on my slide. Here's a link. If you have these slides open, you can sign up right here. You will get all the news and information about everything through there once a month. That's it from my side. I'm not going to use up any more time, and gladly hand over back to Merel and Amwater for the next presentation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Lars, for the presentation. I would like to hand it over to John from Amwater to share his screen.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. That was really amazing to see your work, Lars. Really exciting. Let me see if I can share screens. Unfortunately, you were supposed to hear this presentation from Petri Autio from our side, our product manager. But he's ill today, so you're stuck with me, but I'm going to do my best to make it interesting and maybe depart from the slides a little bit and get into the platform itself. So I thought I'd share screens. First of all, to start with the topic, when I thought about what is the future of the WASH data ecosystem, my first thought is that the future is there is no WASH data. There's really, a diverse set of actors that are collecting and using and acting on data in a diverse set of activities. And most of those activities are carried out by what we call frontline workers. That could vary between, somebody reading a meter, somebody collecting a payment from a customer of a piped water utility, or a maintenance service provider, all the way up to government agencies. In most countries where we're working, the primary responsibility for, the actual assets that produce drinking water and sanitation services are owned by a lower level administrative unit like a county or a district. And so our focus is always on improving the ability of those frontline workers to use data in their work to make decisions and to collect data as a result of their actions, not make their actions about collecting data. I think the sector, we've been in this digital WASH sector now for almost 15 years. I think the sector has shifted away from kind of a top-down approach of national data collection efforts, tools for donor decision-making and things like that were very upwardly focused, and shifting the responsibility and the empowerment down to the organization that's collecting the data and using it for their work. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that digital water is already a huge sector around the world. It's actually $25 billion a year of expenditures, but most of that is going to very expensive solutions that are very advanced and do very great things, like real-time measurements and digital meter reading or remote meters. All that is coming. What we're focused on is how do we get the utilities and water resource managers ready and able to use those advanced tools and able to access finance so that they can expand their services. All this really comes back to finance, all of our work. So everything that we do should be, making the service providers more able to access finance and more creditworthy. So MWater, where do we come in? It's a free solution for data collection management. We're excited to share that we actually just reached 25 million surveys last night. So if you come to our website or our portal here, you can see a real-time count of everything that is coming in. And surveys, was the beginnings of MWater. We also have this concept of sites, which are things that you monitor over time and manage. And you can do a survey on a site and thereby monitor your key performance indicators over time, which is really important if you're trying to improve your performance, if you're a utility or a government water office. So how do we go about doing that? How do we support these entities? First, we start with asset management. And in MWater now, you can map any kinds of water assets. We have sanitation assets that are coming soon. And if you're a utility, you can just, for free, set up your water system. Minimize here. And you set the basic information about the water system itself, and then you can either import data by shapefile, CSV, or send people out to the field to map the data. And what we find is most utilities, that are organized water service providers have at least some data about their systems. And it's a matter of getting in what they have and then going out and reproducing what's missing or needs to be determined. To support the asset management process, though, an important issue that we observed as we started helping utilities and governments to do asset management is they tend to start from scratch, with each new project. Like, they'd hire consultants to figure out what assets, properties they need to monitor. And we've released this open source asset standard to make that process easier, to get rid of that first step of figuring out how to monitor assets in the first place. So We have standard classes of assets here. We have standard properties about the assets, and anybody's free to use this. We've just kind of gone to the work of collecting the asset data from dozens of different partners in different countries to kind of see what are the things that they need to monitor. So with that, once you've done some of that, this is a system in Indonesia as part of the USAID WSSH Tengu activity that we've been working with. This is, I think they serve about 40,000 connections, and these are the individual dots here, the household connections. But once you import your data, you get a unique page for each asset. Some of the asset data is available if you have it, like diameter, length, things like that, materials. This particular utility is very concerned about, they have a lot of aging asbestos pipes, and they need to replace those with new pipes. So that's one of their first objectives now that they've got this data in the platform, is to be able to identify those and replace them. And then, once you get your assets in, now you can do things like do regular surveys on them every month to collect key performance data that goes into your KPIs. But there's a lot of other data that utilities are also needing to deal with, and that's more on the financial side. And, I think we all know from working with service providers, if you don't have enough money, the priority is always money, because you need to have money to be able to pay your staff to provide services and do maintenance and all the things that provide service to the customer. So we've been working on developing and releasing different modules to support that process. One is a customer management module that lets you track your customers in the balance due. Meter reading, we've already developed with the USAID Haiti project in the previous iteration. Now we're beginning USAID Haiti O, which is going to further develop this. And it will provide the utility a really simple, robust system to track meter readings over time, and they could export that data to their accounting system. If they're a very small utility, they could use our kind of basic accounting system that tracks expenses and balances. So all that data, can then be once you've got this sort of data-driven management process. One of the cool things you can start doing is making plans for the future. So lastly, I'll cover this planning tool. The planning tool is basically a way to say what future service level do we want to achieve, and there's different ways that utilities can use this to plan either the location of systems or the location of individual assets, and they can cost those assets out using the planning tool, and in terms of both operations and maintenance and capital expenditure, and predict their future capital expenditures, and even compare different plans over time, and use it for project design, things like that. So this is all about the routine monitoring of your customers and your expenses and your finances. Hopefully, the goal is this leads to more creditworthiness, and once there's investment available, we need to know what is the next thing that needs to be constructed or invested in. All of this data that we collect then in this way can be harnessed through the platform to calculate things like KPIs. That's something we do for the DNEPA in Haiti, the National Water Agency. It can also be used, to enable individual asset owners. In this case, this is showing the RUMIS system in Uganda that districts are opting into this. We're basically taking what was a static national water atlas and turning it over to the districts so that they can update the data set and then keep it up to date in real time. And one of the activities going on here is the implementation of a monthly call center approach to keep up-to-date information on the functionality status of water points in certain districts in Uganda. And this platform also allows other development partners, NGOs and donors to contribute data to the government's database. rather than, having to do a specific mapping effort, they can contribute that data and make it available to the government, and the government can then access it and use it. So that's just kind of a brief, tour around the world of what we're trying to do. The focus always for us is how can we make data available to the people that need it in the field as they're doing their work, capture that data, make it something that can be used to calculate things like sector performance indicators, but always with the focus on, what are the problems that people have in providing water and sanitation services that we can actually help to solve. So with that, I think I'll head off and hand it over to the next presenter, but I look forward to hearing what everybody else has to say.
Thanks, John, for your presentation. We've got lots of questions coming in through the chat, so that's great.
I'll take a look.
I would like to hand over the floor to Jeske and Nick. And I think, Nick, can you share your screen, please?
So hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm Jeske Verhoeven, and I lead the WASH Systems Academy at IRC. And IRC, together in collaboration with WASHNote, is developing a learning companion to be used as part of the WASH Systems Academy. So I'll be taking you through. Nick, can you go to the next slide? So I'll be doing this presentation together with Nick Dickinson of WASHNote, and I'll be taking you through the first part, so why are we interested to develop a learning companion with AI? And then Nick will talk further about what we are doing and possible linking to the WASH sector. So next slide, please. So the WASH Systems Academy is an online learning platform developed to share the knowledge, resources, and tools for the many, many organizations in the world who are trying to strengthen water sanitation and hygiene systems. So it's a very much an online collaborative platform. Next slide, please, Nick. And it was the WASH Systems Academy was launched in September 2019. And at the moment, we have over 8,000 registered users from 125 different countries. And 95% of our users are recommending our courses. But most importantly, 90% of our users are finding opportunities to use the course content to improve their work within the first 6 months. And that is really our ultimate aim as well, is to provide something that is useful, that helps you to strengthen the systems in your own context. So why a learning companion? So as I was showing, it's a global platform of many users of many different languages and cultures around the world. And we only provide support via email from the beginning. So we're thinking that a learning companion developed with AI could provide support to users from the very start. So when they're interested to register, to provide support and troubleshoot from that moment. And also help, we now have over 30 courses in English, French, Spanish, and soon to come Russian and Amharic, to help them identify which courses are actually meet their needs and where they should start. And also hoping that a learning companion could also provide more insights into course content. The courses itself are global. They have many different examples from many different countries, but we're hoping that we're building a curated database, a knowledge base next to it, which Nick will talk more about, that it would be helpful that they can ask questions to more on the course content, but also give them tips and tricks and more information where to find more information, and also to provide extra information next to the course content itself, with extra country examples or extra user-specific examples. And as our ultimate aim is to provide knowledge that helps people strengthen the systems that are in place and their own role in strengthening systems, is to help them brainstorm about how to critically apply knowledge to their own WASH system. Next slide, please. Yeah. Yeah, so at the moment we're testing it. It's very much a pilot project where we're
Jeske, you're muted.
Hi, you can hear me now again?
Yes.
Yeah, we just missed this.
So we're testing. Yeah, where do I go back to? Or this is okay?
The start
Okay,
of
cool.
this slide.
Perfect. So we're testing, it's very much a pilot project. We're testing it at the moment in our basic and our building block course. So the basic course of 16 hours, 16 or 8 hours on what is system strengthening, and the 16-hour course on introducing each of the building blocks of sustainable WASH systems. That's what we're testing it on at the moment. So next slide, please. And we're looking into 3 specific use cases for 3 of our key users. On one side, government. It's a key audience for system strengthening, as the responsibility for service provision lies with government. And about 26% of our users at the moment are from government. Women, we hope that a learning companion could possibly increase female participation and completion rates and provide like a safe space for questions that is always available. And at the moment, 27% of our users are female, but we very much would like to further increase this. And thirdly, young professionals. They are by far our largest audience. They often are also early adopters to new technologies, and they need contextualization. There are newcomers to water sanitation and hygiene service provision, and we're hoping that a learning companion could help contextualize information for them. Then we're going to test the learning companion in 3 different modalities. We provide, the WASH Systems Academy provides online courses standalone as MOOCs, a standalone open course for anybody, self-paced, self-guided, it's for free, and users can communicate with us through email. We also provide the online courses together with structured support. It's still structured at certain times, but together with live webinars or virtual workshops, adapted course content and group work. So we're also looking into if the learning companion could support users who are getting online courses together with structured support. So for example, when they're doing their group work, they could also ask questions to the learning companion. And thirdly, we're testing it with blended learning, where we provide online courses mixed in with face-to-face workshops. So we're trying to compare those 3 modalities, seeing where a learning companion could make sense and would be most beneficial, possibly also in all 3 modalities. So now I'll hand over to my colleague Nick Dickinson of WASHNote to talk you through where we are.
Thanks so much, Jeske. And it's been exciting to see what everybody is doing, some very impressive work that we've seen so far. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about, the idea of the learning companion and how we're building it for the WASH Systems Academy. And a big part of that is really about curation and selecting data that is relevant to learners. So we have 2 focus countries, Rwanda and Ethiopia, for the testing. And what we see on the left is an example of, our document library, where we keep some documents, some typical metadata about those documents. And these are all documents that were considered, let's say, the top 10 documents for IRC in these countries, and as good resources for learners from those countries who are starting to engage with IRC content. So on the right, you can see some example exchanges. And so far, we've been using Telegram as the mobile and desktop app that people use in order to exchange with the learning companion. It's very much at prototype stage, but this just gives a sense of how it's being used. And part of our knowledge base is also building what we call a knowledge graph. And for some people, maybe that's a new concept, but basically it's a network of different ideas. And what we're trying to do is model the language and the ideas of the WASH Systems Academy. So in other words, a water and sanitation and hygiene system, one can cut up in various different ways, and people do, or organizations do. WaterAid has a list of building blocks, IRC has a list of building blocks, and GLASS has some different sections of their survey. But what's important for the purpose of learning is to be able to speak the language of that learning environment. So what we've tried to do is also give the learning companion some constraints and access to information that is also within this network, so that information that also comes from documents can be then shared, but using the terminologies that IRC uses. And related to that, it's also a network like this can also help discover contextual information. So by mapping out the concepts, for example, under finance building block, then in that way, and identifying which documents are addressing those concepts, we can more quickly narrow down searches to the right information, but we can even at times use rules to find new related information that might be useful. So where are we now? I mean, this is definitely an early stage product. So the prototype is live and we're testing it internally. It's alpha testing. So we're not yet kind of going further than IRC and partners in Rwanda and Ethiopia. But the curated knowledge base is live, and it has the core, let's say, methodology, the building blocks and course content, has access to some top 10 documents, which I showed, and full academic citations. And the knowledge graph is loaded in a database, but we're still testing its integration. So that's where we are now. I think what we've learned so far is that AI and knowledge graphs definitely have a role in making data on WASH systems more accessible. I mean, that's WASHNote's goal in this project. I mean, I've been a proponent for some time of trying to organize our sector data in some more discoverable fashions, mapping out different concepts across different ways of measuring the WASH system. So hopefully this will make all of that work a little more accessible. And you know, having use cases, working, for example, specifically with learners within the academy and in specific countries also definitely helps improve AI responses. I think a lot of people have heard about things like hallucination or making up information, and that definitely happens with these large language models. But one of the ways of constraining that and making sure that it's useful is really testing with users, ground truthing, curating the information so that there's validated and trusted information available. And in a way, it's all about creating the same diversity of perspectives in, let's say, AI products and language models as we have in the sector. So bringing in different points of view and making sure that people can curate that information. So that's it, I think, on the Learning Companion. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you so much, Nick and Jeske, for this really great presentation. I'm going to share my screen again. And I would like to give the floor to Katy Sill from USAID DNA.
Great, thanks, Merel. My name is Katy Sill. I'm the Chief of Party for the new USAID Water Security, Sanitation, and Hygiene Data and Analytics activity. So we're using the acronym WSSH, so that's WASH and WRM, which is core to USAID's global water strategy. Next slide. So just briefly, you know, high-level objectives, and I'll go into each of these, mainly the first two, which I think are most relevant to this group. The focus of the activity will be to support USAID's 22 priority countries for WASH, which are shown on the map. The project is implemented by Secura with consortium members from ACBO, Encompass, ITAD, and Tetra Tech. There's a link to the website below, and I can throw that in the chat after this presentation. We are going to experiment a little bit with Zoom polling here. One of our goals in this early stage of the project, so we're about 6 months in, is to gather input from the stakeholders and the folks working and making decisions. And so if we can give this a go, Merel, if we can put up the first poll, and then Emeline from ACBO, who's on the call as well, will take us through the results at the end of my presentation. So just to start, you know, we're looking at perceptions, and I think this audience is unique maybe in your interaction with data, but we're looking for kind of what is your current perception regarding the use of data in the WASH sector, and there's a few options below. And this very data-minded group is already answering the poll, so thank you so much. Just give you another few moments here. All right. Looks like we have a majority of participants at this point. I'll give another few moments and then we'll move on to the next slide. All right, Merel, can you go to the next slide? I just want to give kind of a high-level overview of the program. And so, let's see here. We have 4 different components. The first one is strengthening the WASH data landscape, and that's what I'll talk mostly about today. We have a component on supporting data-informed decisions, one on monitoring USAID's system strengthening work, and then also providing some tailored decision support tools, more of kind of a buy-in process if you're familiar with how USAID works. For that first component, we're looking at a couple of different specific activities that I think, we're eager to work with many of you on the call. We are using kind of an advisory group, and I see some members on the call today, to help guide this portion of the project. We're looking at conducting, forward-facing research to kind of figure out what is needed, what information do we have, what information do we need to increase the use of data within the sector. We're looking to build momentum around WASH data through sector engagement. So that's through participation in activities like today, through hosting our own events, through promoting communication products on LinkedIn and other channels, and also doing some investment in public goods. And so I'll mention more of that down the line here. We also have specific tools that we're going to be developing, and I can share a little bit of information about the current suite that we're envisioning, and then let you know that we're also just starting on a stakeholder engagement process. We may be reaching out to some of you soon to kind of gather your inputs on these tools and where they fit in the larger ecosystem. All right, next slide. The overarching principles, and it's an interesting time since the principles were just updated, the digital principles, and so I've put the new ones in, though the program was initially drafted under the old principles, and we're sort of still getting to know these new principles and see how we can align around them. But from an aid perspective, we're very much eager to ensure equity through the data lifecycle, have a responsible use of data, align with these principles for digital development, and specifically on focusing on understanding the existing ecosystem. So working with what's already in existence rather than always coming up with something new and different to try and convince people to use something that they are not already using. And then the focus is on kind of support rather than data, meaning we are not focused on data collection. We're focused on using the existing resources and making sure that the analysis is available and understandable by a range of decision makers. Next slide. So there are many different versions of what people call the data value chain, the data ecosystem, and I think probably many organizations on this call have their own version. This is just a simple one of kind of the different steps in terms of data kind of being identified and then collected, processed, analyzed, and then shared and used. Our focus right now is towards the end. We're looking at trying to show the value of data and that it can be used to inform programming decisions. Our target audience for much of the program will be, USAID staff who make, top line decisions on where funding is going, on their implementing partners, and then on host country governments where USAID missions exist. We have a second poll, if we can throw that up. And this is really about where, in your day-to-day work, if you work with data, where's the challenge that you're seeing? Which step of this particular data value chain? Is it in identifying and evaluating? Is it in data collection, data processing, analysis, and use? And it could be all of these, but if we can kind of get which are your top ones, that would be fantastic. All right, and we can go to the next slide as you finish up that poll. I wanted to take you through a couple of these specific activities that we'll be doing under that first component I mentioned, and really solicit input. So I'll have my email at the end. We're very open to ideas and to make connections with folks that are working on tools or working on projects that maybe we're not aware of. We will be doing an annual research brief, so trying to kind of tackle a couple of these big questions that we have in terms of, what incentivizes data use, or what is, the key components of an MIS that allows people to make key decisions within a country. We're also looking, again, as I mentioned, to just kind of increase the drumbeat. I think sometimes we see certain topics come up in our LinkedIn feeds or Facebook, and other times data maybe isn't on the top of mind. And so we're looking to amplify, the messages that are being sent out by folks on this call, as well as new products that will be developed through this program. We are looking to host quarterly webinars to highlight existing tools that USAID staff and their implementing partners and host country government colleagues can use to improve programming. So we'll be reaching out again and hosting more of these events in the coming months. We're also looking to identify existing data efforts where USAID can contribute. This could mean data. So aid is sort of a wealth of data. It doesn't often make it into open data locations. And so we're exploring internally with aid kind of what are the processes, what are the barriers to doing that, and can we maybe overcome some of those challenges to help aid share data more effectively. We'll also be launching a small grants program in year 2, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And then finally, in year 2, we'll have an annual convening. So we're looking into different formats for that, trying to be as effective as possible to get kind of a nice network and a nice conversation going on evidence-informed decisions in WASH. Next slide. So I wanted to share, this is the current suite of tools that we're envisioning to develop for the USAID program. These were identified through sort of an internal process led by USAID before they launched this activity on what the needs were from mission staff. So the first tool is a WASH scenario forecast exploration. We're using the International Futures Model to help kind of identify some scenarios. If you increase WASH, what are the effects of that? If you decrease WASH access, what are the effects of that on GDP, on health, on education, on some of these kind of larger development sectors? And this really helps maybe make the argument for the importance of WASH, not just within our own sector, but more broadly within development. The second tool is a country context benchmarking dashboard. This is really looking at where a country is aligned with the US Global Water Strategy, but it's really kind of all of our sector. So it's where are you, how are you doing in terms of water access? How are you doing in terms of sanitation access? How are you doing in terms of, conflict mitigation around water? How are your water resources being managed? So even though it's tied to the US Global Water Strategy, they're very applicable, areas for all folks working in development. And this will kind of look at where the country is in terms of reaching some of these goals. And you can compare kind of amongst nearest neighbors, if you're ahead or behind of your closest neighbors. And the final tool is a district level prioritization. So if you've done some analysis and you're beginning to know that you want to do a certain kind of project, one of the biggest questions, I think, from an aid perspective is which exact district should we be working in? And this tool will help, bring in data to kind of give that data informed. This is how many people have access. This is maybe some of the wealth indicators behind that are important to the program, some of the demographic data to allow aid to kind of have a more objective way of looking at where they should be focusing. And then I think we can go to the last slide and the last poll. Just to wrap up, there's my contact information. Please reach out if you're interested in engaging more. I will throw some ways to follow. Our updates will be coming through Global Waters on LinkedIn and through the Global Waters website from USAID. And we'll be posting regularly. And then this last poll is just on the barriers. So, from your perspective, are there barriers to why you don't use data more that we could maybe begin to focus on in the coming years? All right. I think I'll give you a moment here to finish, and then maybe Emeline to go through the poll.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, Emeline, if you would like to unmute yourself.
Yes.
We can share the results of the 3 questions quickly with the audience.
Yeah, Please. So thank you, Katy, for the presentation. I know we are part of the consortium. We are super excited to support the tool development. Before you ask us question, I'd like to ask question to you. So I think the first question, we wanted to get a little bit the perception of the sector. You all as WASH and data enthusiasts, what do you think? How do you think the sector is doing for the use of data? I don't know. Merel, if that works to show the result, or should I go? Oh, perfect. We can see.
I'm closing the first poll, and would you like to look at the first one?
Yes, we can do it in order.
Sure. Yes, so this is the first one.
So the first one, we see that there is more people thinking that we can still improve a little or a lot in the sector to use data. I think as a program, we really want to strive so that at the end we have everyone thinks that data is used effectively. On the second question,
sorry, 1 moment.
So the second question was about the data chain step, the data value chain steps, and here we see that for the majority, people think that there is more challenge with data collection and storage and with data sharing and use. So I think that's also give us ideas that probably we should focus effort in supporting efficient way to do those two steps. And we can go to the third one, which was some similar question, but based on your own experience, what you would put as a key barrier, and that we have, because it was one option to be answered, we have a clear winner with the lack of availability, which joined the previous question where we see people have most also challenges around data collection and storage. So I think that's interesting input for us. Thank you very much all.
Thanks so much, Emeline and Katy, for your presentation and for doing the polling exercise. That was really nice. And now I'd like to hand over the floor to Duncan from Acquia.
Thank you so excuse me. Thank you so much, Merel. There we go. Get the slides up. Hi to everybody, and thank you all for being here. I'm really personally thrilled, and Acquia and Project W are really happy to kind of be a part of this and hearing from all of you today. My name is Duncan Penfold-Brown. I'm the Project W lead at Acquia, and yeah, given our time frame, I just want to dive right in. So I'm going to briefly introduce Acquia for those of you who haven't worked with us or spoken to us before, and then we're going to dive into talking about the specific problem of data discoverability in the WASH sector. So several others have kind of mentioned it before, but yeah, then we're going to lead on to how that brought about Project W, what Project W is, and how we're really working to represent all WASH data and all WASH relevant data in the sector. Yeah, so let's hop right in. Next slide, please, Merel. So who are we? Who is Acquia? We are a research and consulting organization, not for profit. In terms of consulting, we produce effects on the ground. We really go for working with local organizations and bridging the gap between funders and local programming. Ultimately, we're trying to affect positive evidence-based, especially, and sustainable change. In terms of research, we focus on publications. So we have 44 peer-reviewed publications that we're really happy with. We also work all over the world. So we have 7 countries with full-time staff, including offices in Nairobi and Accra. And throughout our various projects, we've worked in 24 countries, that's past and present. So our goal, of course, is to advance global health through WASH, so access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene. I'd like to note also that we're very data-driven. So we use a lot of data. We're really committed to the data-driven sort of decision-making ethos, if you will. And because we do a lot of primary research, we generate a lot of data. We create a lot of primary data. So ultimately, we're really interested and invested in the direction of data and technology in the sector. So it is really quite thrilling to hear what everyone else is up to here. Okay, next slide. So to dive right into it, this is a bit of preaching to the choir because I think we're all really pretty convinced we have similar problems with data in the sector. But something I'd like to highlight was something that was said in the WASHWeb working group statement on using data better. So there's 2 points there that kind of stood out, right? These 2 points, how can we make publicly available data more accessible and more usable? And how can we incorporate data that is more difficult to find? Or how indeed can we even find data that's difficult to find? So I want to walk through this image. It's kind of chaotic, right? We have this sort of logo cloud here on the left, and it's meant to be chaotic. Effectively, it's trying to represent the world of data that we all work in. So say we're doing research or writing a proposal or planning the expansion of an existing program on rural water systems in West Africa. So we need data. Again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but we need to contextualize and understand the space. We need to provide evidence for funding, and we need to ultimately implement and plan effectively. We want to implement the best programs that we can, or help implement the best programs that we can. So what's out there for data? There are so many things. Many of you actually participate in some of these things, and for example, I think MWater is in there somewhere. But yeah, there are so many data sources that cover WASH and WASH relevant data. So this leads to our challenges, really. Ultimately, we want a fully hydrated data landscape to inform our project or our problem or our research. So the challenge is, or how can we find that data? How can we be confident that we've covered everything, or that we're not missing something that's critically important? And how much is that going to cost? How long is it going to take? Do we have the necessary staff, etc.? So this is really where Project W comes in. Hydrated landscape was a little WASH pun. You're welcome. So really, this is where Project W comes in, hopefully swoops in with its cape on. So let's talk about that. Let's go to the next slide. So what is Project W? First, I want to be really clear about what problem we're solving. So we're solving the problem of making existing data accessible. So what is it that Project W does? So we go out and we find all of the data that's relevant to WASH that we can. We organize that data, we annotate it, we curate it, and ultimately we make it discoverable or make it findable. So we're addressing this confidence gap in knowing what data is out there. One quick point on this is that by data, we really mean data. We're talking about publicly available or publicly discoverable data sets. So we're not yet generating or creating information in the field. For example, WASHWeb's database of organizations. We're not doing something like that. But that does provide us a lot of interesting areas for collaboration. So we're very happy to talk about that with kind of everyone on the call today. So what we're doing is we're building, call it what you will, an index, a catalog, a phone book. Ultimately, we're building this directory for all WASH and WASH relevant data. So what does that exactly look like? We have a directory, a platform, and then a service. So the directory is what I've talked about, a directory of all publicly available WASH data sets. We have a platform to expose that directory and to provide users utility to kind of search through and organize that data. And then we also offer a service. So I won't talk about this too much here, but generally we pride ourselves on our expertise in compiling and applying WASH data in the sector. So we offer this as a service. And if you're interested in that, again, please feel free to reach out. Quickly, to talk about who Project W is for, we developed Project W with 3 sort of categories of sort of users or audience in mind. And those would be governments, funders, and implementers. Each have sort of different and definitely overlapping, but specific data concerns. We thought, okay, these are the groups of people that will affect the most change in the WASH sector. So we want to kind of develop with them in mind. But ultimately, if you'll allow me to make sort of a cheesy point, Project W is really for people, right? It's for proposal writers or program developers, data analysts, implementation planners, anyone who's working with data to aid their WASH decision-making or their WASH efforts. So it's really kind of for all of us. We'll look a little bit more at the platform. If we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so just a few things to focus on here. We won't walk through all the details, of course. But yeah, the directory and the platform emphasize sort of 2 things. They emphasize curation. So that is, we have a number of categories that are arranged in a hierarchy with which we can tag public data sets. We also aim to curate sort of various fields that kind of populate a metadata spec for all of our data sets. So that involves mapping out data types, talking about the data contents, looking at the data update frequency, so on and so forth. We really aim to characterize all these public data sets, and we do that in order to make it as useful for users as possible, so you can very quickly understand what kind of data is out there for your particular problem space. Developing this metadata spec is a really interesting area for collaboration among the sector as well, so it's quite interesting. The other thing that the platform and directory emphasize is discoverability. So as you sort of see through these screenshots moving left to right, the platform has a hierarchy of categories that are both searchable and browsable. So you can browse data by category, or you can also just search for categories amongst the data. Data sets are all raw text searchable, and each data set is also identified with some kind of geography, which are searchable and browsable, and in the future, will be mappable. So that's sort of what we have here. At the far right, you end up with, the data set details and a section that potentially highlights related data sets, which is also an interesting area for technological development. I know Nick mentioned something about knowledge graphs, and this is, potentially here, this gives us the ability to expose a bit of a data knowledge graph. For example, what data sets have been used to solve similar problems, to inform similar proposals, etc. So yeah, so that's what Project W is. This is the directory and the platform we're talking about. Yeah, let's hop to the next slide if we can. So we can talk a bit about where we're going, where we're heading in the future. So there is a lot going on here in this space in general. This is one of the reasons it's really exciting to be here and hear about what everyone is working on. So this slide is a little intentionally busy. There's too much to talk through, totally. So I want to focus on a few highlights that will really kind of look at opportunities for discussion and collaboration amongst the sector. Before I do that, though, briefly, I'll say, we're developing our personnel side. So we're building editorial teams. We are involving WASH experts, which is something we would love to talk with all of you about, but to do sort of category and data curation sort of improvement. And we're also building review and support teams to really assist potential users of the Project W platform. Okay, but into the fun stuff to talk about, perhaps. Two things that Project W is really interested in. Katy Sill just brought this up earlier as well, focusing on sort of the down the chain sort of data interest is using the data, right? So basically, we'd like to use the data in Project W to sort of demonstrate the power of the tool itself, right? Having all the data in one place, organized and accessible, that actually gives you a really, a powerful sort of access point to do analyses, to write proposals, etc. So we want to work with all of you and our clients and our users, etc., to do things like this and to potentially feature those on the platform going forward, particular data highlights or particular analyses that come in the field. Yeah, so that's one thing we're really interested in. The technological side is another thing that we're developing and investigating. So, we have advanced automation, we have traditional AI, we have, like everyone, an interest in generative AI. Particularly, some of the things I just heard from Nick on this sort of, was it the learning companion? Those are really interesting as we aim to sort of work with data in a way that is more about summarizing it or ingesting it into our data directory. Also, the traditional AI concerns that we, maybe all have are the kind of the 3 R's of traditional AI, which are, data set ranking, relevance, and recommendation. So those are always things that we're interested in. And we're interested in talking to other people who are working with those systems as well. So, yeah, but yeah, running low on time here. So I'll move on to the last slide, where we can just talk a little bit about collaboration. So there are so many opportunities, it feels like, for collaboration and working together, but just brainstorming based on what I've heard already today, there are things we can do with WASHWeb. Obviously, Olivier Mills, who will talk about WASH AI in a second, we've thought about how we can dovetail nicely together. Hearing about MWater and MWater's incredible sort of repository of data, that's something we'd be really interested in talking about, how to work together there. But ultimately, the important part is that we're talking about it and working together. So yeah, I guess I'll conclude on that note. with just a thanks to Nick and Merel for hosting us here, and just a reminder that, you know, Project W is basically an effort in this space, right? We're working to find, organize, and expose all this WASH data and WASH relevant data in this kind of chaotic world of data that's out there. So, you know, can we make this available? Can we link up and talk about this and talk about what's useful here? Of course. So, you know, our contact detail is below. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Duncan. That was really, really great. I think everyone is curious about Project W and where it will go. All right, I'll hand the floor over to the last presenter, Olivier Mills from WASH AI. And I believe you're going to present your own slides.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's good. Excellent. Whoops. Just bear with me for 1 second. Hi. So I will be, it was great hearing all those other presentations. This is like perfectly aligned. So I'm very excited to present a little bit about the opportunity of generative AI or large language models in discovering data primarily, and how we can use these to make data available. Very, very aligned with everything that's been presented today. So I will not speak too much. I'll give you a brief overview of what language models are and WASH AI, but speak specifically to the data side of things. So language models, if you don't know, this is ChatGPT basically, but there's about 100,000 other language models out there. It's only that OpenAI did a very good job with marketing, and they also did build an amazing model. But really, when you think of the more traditional machine learning, it's really in the 2010s. But language models are very, very new. They really only came out in 2017. With transformers, and really since 2022 we've seen highly performing language models, and so we haven't really seen them used a lot in the data space yet, because everyone's trying to figure it out. So you've all used language models to work with words, right? You use GPT to summarize things, simplify things, extract key takeaways of very long reports, or best of all, I use it to summarize very long meetings that I don't go to. So that's been very, very useful for all of us. But again, there's opportunities we can see within data as well. So we built WASH AI around this idea of language. So very, very similar to what WASHWeb is doing. And with IRC, we're looking at making all of this word quote data available and transforming it to making it more available and generally in the sector around WASH, in specifically domain-specific language engagement. But that's really only sort of like one part of the services that we're trying to build. So just to clarify, WASH AI is, while there is a product out there, our goal is to focus on being more of a service behind the scenes. And so even with our data components, we're looking at making it available to other organizations, including those on the call today presenting, so that it can feed into the existing systems that are out there. So there's a bunch of services that are currently available, and we're expanding as we go. And I'll be talking specifically around the data part of things. So we talked a lot about data discovery, and I know we got data scientists on the call, so I apologize for my terminology. This is probably not the right one, but I see it as really searching for the data sets, and we've seen presentations on that, finding which ones are relevant, really hard, cleaning the data, even harder, transforming it, even harder, and interpreting it gets it really, really hard. So that's what I see as like the components of data discovery. So the challenges have been, you talked a lot, we saw those polls out there, that was great. When we look at it from like WASH AI's perspective, it's very aligned, and I think there's extra opportunity on the orange, the bubbles on the right, is like, who's using what data set? Like, you can put it out there, but who's actually using it? How do we check for people to engage with these data set? How useful was it? What's people experience engaging with the data? So when we are building interactive tools, we actually have the opportunity to understand better what people are doing with this data, or at least which ones are coming up with the types of queries that they have. And then it speaks to which data sets could be more relevant and help with that ranking challenge that Duncan was speaking to as well. So how can we use AI to help with data discovery? There are lots of different ways. I am going to focus on these three parts of it and present a little bit what we've been working on at WASH AI. So part of the motive again was this idea that people like interacting more easily with it. We're not all data scientists. We're not experts at downloading a CSV and dealing with it. So how can we break that barrier to interpreting data? Unless someone puts it in a very readable report, first of all, you got to read the report. But even then, like, it's hard sometimes to understand this data and analyze it. So we're exploring how to go from basically data set to information and knowledge using AI. And really trying to tackle this goal of, which I think there's at least 3 presentations that have the same goal, which is fantastic, is basically get the right data in the hands who need it and help them, I think, understand and interact with as well. So I'm going to walk you through, I know that this might be quite complex, but I'm going to try and walk you through a simplified approach to how AI can help with some of these components of discovery. So starting with the data extraction side. So anything that's blue, so the middle one there are like the data extraction, that's all AI powered. But the idea here on the data extraction side of things is that we can basically take documents, and Lars presented an example of like a table in a PDF report that, is unstructured data. Even though it's in a table, it's technically unstructured data. How we can extract that data and create essentially a data set, like think of it as like going from a table in a PDF to an Excel table. Now the challenge is that everyone uses different headers, different labels, different column names, and so we need to standardize this data. So again, AI is actually really, really good at detecting that, and we can very simply, and you can try it today, I don't have time, but you can even do it with GPT, where you can give some sample data, give some headers, and then you can essentially generate it, compare it to existing data schemas that are out there. And I think there was presented briefly, and it was in the chat as well, there's a lot of standards that are coming up, a lot of standard indicators that are presented. DHS has some, MWater said that they shared a collection of types of indicators that people can use. And so we can have AI take a data set and essentially standardize its schema, which means having sort of common columns. We can also connect the data together, extract information about the data, and then store it. Now, that's leveraging AI to essentially make unstructured information as well as information spread across different spaces more available and more standardized, so that it can be then used again by AI to interpret. So on the interpreting side, I'll give you an example starting on the top right. These are random questions. I don't know if these are the type of questions people would have. For example, sanitation coverage comparisons between 2 areas, which a simple map might not be able to do. You would have to like jump between the 2, for example. You might want to do some sort of aggregate type question that could come up. And again, AI is in blue here in the middle of the squares. So we can use AI, and we've done this with WASH AI, to essentially decompose a question and break it down into different, like what exactly is the person asking. From that, we can then have a data domain routing, which basically is that it helps, based on these queries, it can help understand which data sets to look at. Because again, we've made AI understand these data sets that were available, so we can route the question to the right data set. And then we can use natural language to SQL is a query language for data. We can use natural language to query this data from the data store and then provide an aggregate answer. So they ask, for example, a summary, for example, or how many, a list, or a comparison. It might have to do this with 2 separate data sets. And then we can provide a response to that original question. So that's where the AI fits in to help make those CSVs stored in a database somewhere more available as plain language answers. We can also leverage any small dataset aggregates to then present that in a table, a map, or a different form than just sort of words, scrolling along. So that's a very, very, very simplified explanation on what we're doing. Each of these components have been tested and they work. We're currently putting them all together. And again, this is not necessarily to make this available just for WASH AI. The intention here is making this as think of it as an AI-powered service to organizations who want to do this with their own data sets. And I'd be happy to talk with other organizations, including those on the call, to see how they can leverage this kind of tooling within their own systems and platforms. And really the idea is that we simplify complex data, we make it more available, more transparent, and also help with some data literacy, having people exposed to data that they wouldn't otherwise see because they don't want to pull up a CSV or look through a large Excel file. Also exposing a lot of, and I say exposing in a positive way, to see insights into what we can do with the data that's available but not used. Some of the limitations, obviously, in this approach is this doesn't solve the openness of data, right? The work that Acquire is doing and discovering these data sets, making them more available is extremely important so that we can have access to the relevant data sets. It becomes harder when you work with very, very niche data sets. Obviously, this is completely reliant on the quality, garbage in, garbage out in terms of data, right? So the curation of the data sets and the quality of the data sets are going to matter and what we allow in this kind of system. And then also, it can be challenging to work with extremely complex queries or in terms of the query decomposition. So, we might have some limitations of the type of questions that people might ask when they interact with this data. So what's next for us is to essentially put this in practice with with these data sets, with these unstructured data sources, and explore with organizations how they can leverage this within their existing platforms and integrate AI into some of the toolings that they already have. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Olivier. Thanks so much for the presentation, and thank you to all our speakers. That was our last presentation for today. So now I would like to go into our Q&A session. So we have a little bit less than 15 minutes, and I see that there's been a lot of really great discussion in the chat. And I think a lot of the speakers have been answering the questions live. So I wanted to give anyone the opportunity, if you wanted to unmute yourself and ask a question to one of the speakers, to do so now, or raise your hand and I can unmute you. Otherwise, I will go and see if there's any other questions that we can ask.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I have a question. Yes. I am Alex Bonhomme. I am M&E officer at NWASH. I'm working from Haiti. NWASH is an initiative where we collaborate with DINEPA and Haiti Outreach to deliver water, sanitation, and hygiene in Haiti at a universal level. Now, I have a question. I've been working on a console to query and visualize some data associated with a water system we have in northern Haiti. We are using MWater, and we have a service provider, and the service provider, they told me that they use a beta software developed by MWater to manage the water system. And we are trying to to build a console and connect this console to this beta software used by the service provider. But it's very tricky because I know if just for the survey, if they give me access to the survey, I can use data from a survey as a data source. But now for this beta software they use, my question would be, how can I access those data? How can they give me access to this data so I can use them in my console? Thank you.
I think this question was for John from MWater.
I'm here. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
Alex.
Yeah,
thank you for the question, and thank you for using MWater. And I put our contact address in the chat, so please reach out to us about this. I would say, like, at a global level, primarily the data is owned and controlled by the organization that creates it. In this case, it's the individual CTE or DINEPA. And DINEPA manages permissions at a higher level. So we can put you in touch with the right people. But please reach out to us. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, John. I will contact you. Thanks.
I'll take one more question from the audience if anyone wants to unmute themselves, and then I'll take some questions from the chat. Okay, I'll go straight to the chat. There's a question for Katy that says, very interesting presentation. For the planned decision support tools, as you consider the WASH scenario forecast tool, how many years in the future are you forecasting? And then the second part of the question is there any interaction of the potential impacts climate change might have on WASH? Over to you.
Cool. All right, thanks. No, great question. I think Emeline, please feel free to chime in. We are looking at, I think, about a 25-year kind of forecast horizon. And what we're looking to do is kind of set some like scenarios. So people can go and say, like, if you were to increase WASH by 2%, what would be the impact on some of these other factors? If you were to decrease WASH access by 2%, 3%, 5%, what would happen in the future? The model that we're using, already has kind of a set of factors. And so we're not looking to necessarily introduce new data into that model. We will be using climate change kind of indicators, especially around water resources management and some of the other tools. So if you think of like the country context and the country context benchmarking and the district prioritization tools, those will incorporate, climate data, especially around kind of water resources and expectations. Emeline, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, it's good. You covered it. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. We have a question for Lars. So the question is around the trustworthiness of data. So moving beyond from availability of data, how do we ensure that data can be trusted if it is not ISO certified? So I think there was an example in the chat from sustainability check in Nigeria.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, a great question. I think we trust within researchers to produce trustworthy data. That is, the ultimate baseline of scientific integrity and documentation of method of how that data was collected. As we republish through OpenWASH data, we don't go through the details of these methods. Once that is published, especially in a peer-reviewed journal, we would assume that peer review gives enough trustworthiness to that data itself. Data outside of journal publications collected by like NGOs, we don't have a way to double check. The data is shared, we accept it as it is, and we put our trust into the organizations itself. ISO certification, that is great if you follow standards implemented by ISO, like the testing platforms they have for fecal sludge treatment plants or for the new reinvented toilet challenge toilets, and you publish the data, follow the standards of ISO, fantastic. But it's not a process that I would say, if I identify something in the process where I'm like, oh, that doesn't look great, there's a problem here in the data, I would contact the author itself. But other than that, we trust that the authors have done their best job in providing high quality data.
Great, thank you for that response, Lars. I have a question for Nick and Jeske on the Learning Companion, and perhaps for Olivier as well, about how you can use the same resources perhaps to feed the two different tools that you're building and collaborate on these projects.
Yeah, thanks so much. Jeske, do you want to respond to that?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so from my side, I mean, mostly we're curating information for the purpose of the learners of the courses. I mean, there's nothing really secret about it. It's all kind of public information. So, we do intend to publish, both the knowledge graph and also the document library. So I would hope that, WASH AI could also make good use of that. But, hopefully we could also make use of WASH AI's offerings in the future as well. I mean, we certainly can find ways to collaborate, and Olivier and I do discuss. But Olivier, go ahead. I mean, I don't know what you want to add.
No, that's perfectly aligned with what I was going to say. I think the intention here is we're kind of all at early stage exploration of these tools, and then seeing how we can leverage like the work on knowledge graphs that Nick is doing, and seeing how we can get it to connect. The intention of WASH AI is to make all of this tooling available open source as well. So it is integratable with the tools that you do use, and hopefully once they're mature enough, people can plug and play with some of these AI-powered services, including the tools that Nick is working on there.
Maybe I just add to that. I mean, we do have that specific use case, and Jeske is the director of the WASH Systems Academy, and so for us, what's really important is that they get the information they need, and that IRC is able to provide the right support. So but there are inevitably questions that come in these discussions where we could redirect people as well. So we could say, hey, maybe you should check WASH AI or Project W, or yeah.
Or if you're talking about monitoring, why not connect to mWater?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what the idea of the WASH Systems Academy is as well, is that all courses are for free, and that we connect to all the different actors who are doing interesting things on system strengthening. So absolutely, we would want to share and connect this too. We're just, this is a use case.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So we only have a couple minutes left. I have a question for all the speakers to answer in one sentence. So the topic of the webinar is the future of our WASH data ecosystem. So my question to each of the panelists is, what, in one sentence, I know it's a challenge, what does a future-proof WASH data ecosystem look like? So maybe we'll go in reverse order this time. So we'll start with Olivier.
That's so unfair. I honestly, I don't think, especially in this space, I can speak to AI. I don't know what future proofing is, because the future is extremely unknown, and the pace at which it's evolving is extremely challenging. So in terms of the use of AI, it's really going to be balancing the idea of risk in terms of overusing AI in spaces where it shouldn't be used, as well as not missing out on the opportunities for discoverability and using it in an ethical manner.
Thank you. All right, on to Duncan.
This is tough. Yeah, what was the question?
One sentence.
No, I think, I was sketching down some notes, but I think, aspirationally, I think for WASH in the future, facing data and facing sort of the rapidity of change, we need to be fast, flexible. We need to monitor, much like Olivier just mentioned, very closely. But ultimately, I think we need to be engaging. So that was kind of 3 clauses of a long sentence. But by engaging, I mean, we need to engage talent and expertise and really effort and time to approach the data sector. Otherwise, it will run away. It's moving very quickly. So, yeah.
Thank you, Emeline and Katy.
Yeah, for me, I think more and more we will see that we have to be more specific in the data we are talking about and the stakeholder we are targeting. I think we should really differentiate the need for governments and for service provider and for maybe more program monitoring. And once we understand that better, we define that better, we will be able to communicate better on those different actors. I think that's where we will be moving.
Kind of building on that, I think with these use cases and kind of going with Duncan's sort of key themes, it's like being more active, I think, being iterative, being adaptive. And I think that if we want to keep up with the pace, we need those better use cases so we can then kind of grow with each of those users.
Great, thank you. Nick and Jeske?
Yeah, so I think it's in the same line, but I would see a future where the landscape is both more open and diverse, and I mean that in the sense of the different communities, the types of specific cases that Emeline also referred to. I think there needs to be more cross-fertilization, and not just in WASH, but we need to bring in the people working on you know, large language models and people working in spaces like Wikipedia, working on validation of data in real time, you know, which is bigger than WASH. So I think a future proof approach is going to be one where we link these different communities together.
Yeah, so just to tag in there that and further build on Duncan and Katy, I think it's also very much about inspiring people to use data for decision making and seeing the power of that.
Thanks. John, are you still with us?
I'm here. Yeah, thanks. I think the future is moving away from top-down approaches and repositories of what we call dead data and moving toward live data that's, you know, putting tools into the hands of people that are doing their work, improving services in their communities, and making them able to access finance to expand their services by becoming creditworthy and becoming reliable to the public that they serve.
Yeah, thank you so much. And last but not least, Lars.
Yeah, I'll give a +1 on John. For me, it will be investing into education for data literacy and data management at an early stage.
Yeah, great. Thank you all so much. I have one final poll for everyone. This is from the WASHWeb side. We are very curious what topics that everyone who's joined the call today is most interested in, and whether perhaps we're missing a certain topic in our WASHWeb framework. So if you could just take a moment to answer that last question. Then I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us today and all your presentations and answering the questions. This has been super insightful, and I think a really great moment for us to know what's going on and to start building these connections between all the people who have participated in the call today. So thank you so much. And for the active discussion, it's really great to see so many questions being asked in the chat and answered again. I also saw a couple questions about the slides. So the slides will be all posted on the WASHWeb website, and we will share a recording of the call to those who've joined today, in case you'd like to watch that back. So yeah, thank you so much for joining, and feel free to contact any of the panelists via their email. And if you check out the WASHWeb website, you can also figure out how to join our discussion groups on Matrix. So thank you again, and have a really great rest of your day.